to order. The hearing on the Education Committee, the topic would be on mayoral control of the schools in the city of New York. We are pleased to see Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Farina here to testify. And I know I have a lengthy memo from your office, Mayor. We all would appreciate, in interest of time, if this could be summarized by you instead of reading it. We'd appreciate a summary so that you could speak to it, and then we can get to questions and answers from my colleagues who are up here. That would be appreciated.
I'm going to follow your lead, Mr. Chair, but there's a lot of material we wanted everyone to hear. I'm certainly here for whatever amount of questions and answers you have, so I'll follow your lead, but
Whatever you feel. This is all going to go in testimony. It'll be introduced in whole as testimony, so that there's, your comments are here and will be done.
I'll do my best to compress.
I'd appreciate that.
All right, fair enough.
To introduce my colleagues, we have Senator Golden to my right, Marty Golden. We have Senator Rasenhofer. We have Senator Prasad to the left. And we have Senator Lanza and Senator Felder, who are seated to my right. Senator Latta, who is the ranking committee, ranking member of the Education Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joining us today from the Senate Democratic Conference, we have Senator Jesse Hamilton from Brooklyn, Senator Toby Stavisky from Queens, Senator Neil Breslin from Albany, Senator Brad Hoylman from Manhattan, and Senator Liz Kruger, also from Manhattan, and I'm from Westchester County.
Now, we may see members get up and go from time to time because there are committees that are meeting and holding sessions at this time. So they may have to go to, temporarily to other meetings, and others may be joining us because they're already at meetings. So we appreciate your time, Mayor. We appreciate your attention. This is a very important topic, clearly. I had a very enjoyable visit to my old high school with Chancellor Farina, where I taught for 20 years in the city of New York. So I was an employee of the city education system, and I have fond memories going back. That's where I met my wife, who was also a teacher, now a full professor at Adelphi University in the School of Education. So we are an education family, and we respect and cherish teaching and learning, and that's a process. Mayoral control is a very integral part of the city of New York. It wasn't there when I was there. It came in after that fact, and we're here to see how it's working, how it's going on, and we're here to ask questions of you, and hopefully we can get to the questions as quickly as possible, because there are conferences, I know, at 2, and session will be at 3. And I understand you have someplace you have to be earlier than that, so we're going to try to accommodate as much as we possibly can. Let me just start off with a question. There was a point in time, Mayor de Blasio, that you did not think highly of mayoral control, and had said so. Why'd you change your mind?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you. I want to thank the ranking minority member, Senator Latimer, all the members of the committee. I want to thank the New York City Subcommittee, Education Subcommittee Chair, Senator Felder. Thank you for having me. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the service you gave to the children of New York City and the people of New York City in the years you worked as a teacher. I appreciate that deeply. In fact, my voting record and my record of public statements indicates that when Mayor Bloomberg proposed mayoral control education, I supported him. Now, I didn't always agree with Mayor Bloomberg, but in this area, I thought he was right. And I've always said I think mayoral control has to be responsive to the needs of communities, the needs of parents. I think there's a way to implement it in a particularly responsive fashion. I think Chancellor Farina has done that very effectively. But the concept of mayoral control I've supported and voted in favor of going back to when it was first introduced by Mayor Bloomberg.
Well, I know you had some comments that you wanted to make,
Thank
so
you.
please.
Thank you. I look forward. Well, again, I want to thank all the members of the committee and thank Chancellor Farina for joining us. Chancellor Farina and I go back almost 15 years to when we were serving in District 15 Brooklyn. I was a school board member. She was our district superintendent. just want to affirm the point that under her leadership, I think our schools are making tremendous strides, and this is now we brag about the fact it is Chancellor Farinia's 50th year in education, and I think there's congratulations for that.
It's a survival.
That's right. And I
For
think
that, she needs a medal. Come on.
I would agree with that. You should get a medal for that. But it also has given her tremendous perspective on the different systems we had. As you said, Mr. Chairman, we've seen centralized, decentralized systems, all types of systems. Chancellor Farinia will attest to the fact that this is the one that she's found to be most effective and the one that's allowed her to do her work best on behalf of the children. So that's a key point that I want to make today. I have the honor of being mayor in the city with the largest school system in America. The chancellor is the head of the largest school system in America, and what we have seen in practice, to the core question you asked, is that mayoral control works. It allows us to get things done. It allows us to have real accountability. It allows us to move major new initiatives like pre-K, after-school, equity, and excellence, which I'll describe in a moment. We know at this point in history things have changed from when many of us were growing up. Education determines economic destiny. Very important statistic, a college graduate today earns $1.1 million more over the course of a lifetime than a person who has not graduated from college. Those kind of realities cause us to have a sense of urgency and to try to quickly move the school system to more effectiveness. And I can safely say under the previous system, which I knew intimately and the chancellor even more so, time was often one of the most profoundly wasted realities. That the previous system was bureaucratic, caused endless delays, endless troubles getting to a decision. Major initiatives could not be moved effectively, let alone the fact that sadly the previous system of governance was often accompanied by a certain amount of corruption in a number of districts. Mayoral control, in stark contrast, encourages effective, efficient decision making and the ability to make major changes in the school system that desperately needs it on a constant basis. Now, I remind everyone the previous system had 32 boards at the local level with 9 members each. Superintendents reported to them. There was a 7-member central board named by 6 different entities. There was no clear line of accountability. The buck did not stop anywhere. No one was held accountable through our electoral system. And in effect, the governance system actually made it harder to run the schools. I want to just give you a quote which I think says it all. This is from the New York Times editorial board back in 1989. This quote, "The system has not worked well. Lines of authority are confused and sometimes illogical. Bureaucratic layers have multiplied rather than decreased. Parents and community groups feeling shut out by professional politicians and special interests shun school board elections." That's what was. We all know there was a lot of patronage and a lot of corruption, as I mentioned, and inequalities in the system went unaddressed. They were in fact intensified by the previous governance system. And therefore, when we saw the contrast with mayoral control, we saw the ability to get things done. We saw a much higher level of transparency. We saw an end to the patronage hiring that had pervaded the previous system. A lot of people came to the conclusion that this was the only governance system that actually worked. And by the way, I'm very proud of the fact that we've received tremendous support, as Mayor Bloomberg did before, in our efforts to continue mayoral control. We've received support from Republicans and Democrats, from business and labor, from the faith community, nonprofit community. If there is such thing as a consensus in New York City, this is one of the areas where we come closer to a consensus than many others. There is a broad understanding that this system has worked far better than the previous. There's also a broad understanding that there is no viable alternative that has been proven to work as well. All my predecessors, going back to Mayor Beam, Mayor Koch, Mayor Dinkins, Mayor Giuliani, all fought for this change. And thank God Mayor Bloomberg achieved it. I want to give you a quote from Mayor Giuliani that I think says it all. He very bluntly said when he was mayor that the board system, quote, makes no sense. And he admitted upon leaving office that his biggest regret was not having achieved mayoral control of education. Last year, he supported our effort for the renewal of mayoral control, calling it, quote, a matter of intellectual honesty. And you will remember when Mayor Bloomberg came to you in 2009 asking for an extension of mayoral control, he said that the alternative of losing mayoral control, quote, he said that alternative is too devastating to contemplate. So again, it's not a surprise that I might have had my differences with Mayor Bloomberg or Mayor Giuliani on any number of issues, but in this area there actually is striking consensus that this was something that made sense and we cannot go back from. Now, I do want to give you some of the facts of what's happened during the mayoral control era, because I think these facts are striking, because the most important thing is what have we done for kids. When we were on the verge of mayoral control being enacted in the 2001-2002 school year, graduation rate was 50.8%, 50.8. By the end of the Bloomberg administration operating under mayoral control, graduation rate had increased to 66%, and I give great credit to the mayor and his team for that. Since we have come into office, we have added to that increase in the graduation rate, another 4.5% gain over 2 years. Now, for the first time in New York City history, a graduation rate of 70.5%, the first time we've ever been over 70% graduation. All combined in the mayoral control era, a 20% increase from 50% to over 70% in our graduation rate. We've said very clearly our goal, and we're putting real resources into this goal, is to get to over 80% in the next 10 years. We're clear that mayoral control allows us to do big and bold things like that, to greatly increase the graduation rate. By the way, because a lot of people on this panel I know have really looked at the details of education, here's another detail you will care about a lot. 11 years ago, 22% of kids dropped out of school, never came back, never re-engaged. It is now 9%, a third of what it was. We want to do a lot better. We don't want any kid to leave the process altogether. When you think about 1 in 5 kids used to disengage and never come back, and we've driven that number down substantially, we want to keep driving it down. Also, key indicators under mayoral control, attendance is improving. We're now at 92.2% citywide attendance, highest level in the last decade. Academic performance is improving. We're now, for the second year in a row, we've seen since we've been here, student test scores up in both English and math. I think people know I'm a believer in multiple measures, so I'm going to quote those test score numbers, but I'm not saying that's the only way at all to look at things. We have to always look at multiple measures when we assess. But the test scores give us one indication, and it's favorable. And the big things we've been able to do, and thank you again to all of you for the support for the pre-K initiative and the after-school initiative. The support of the legislature made that possible. Well, again, remember on April 1st, 2014, you voted for the pre-K allotment. We had 5 months to stand up a pre-K program to take pre-K from 20,000 kids in full-day pre-K to 53,000. Only 5 months to do it. Under mayoral control, that was possible. We were able to marshal the forces of all the city agencies that had to be a part of making sure the facilities were safe, that the standards were high, that we had the teachers we needed. That was done in the course of those 5 months because we had mayoral control. Today, 68,500 kids in full-day pre-K. Thank you again to all of you for your support. But even that additional increase, now taking us to the point, again, starting at 20,000, almost 70,000 kids now in full-day pre-K in just 2 years' time, only achievable through mayoral control. What we're doing with community schools, I know there's so much support in the legislature for the community school concept, 130 community schools in New York City now where young people are getting a lot more support, mental health support, physical health, more engagement of their parents and the larger community into the school. We've been able to do that in 130 schools because of mayoral control. Renewal schools, where we have 94 schools that have been challenged and troubled. We're putting in the resources to get them right. We're adding additional instructional time, additional after school, additional professional development. We're holding those schools to a high standard. And what are we seeing already? Attendance going up, chronic absenteeism going down in those schools because we've been able to focus on getting them the right leadership, the right staffing, the right professional development, but also that additional time on task that has made all the difference. We have said very clearly, while I'm on the topic of renewal schools, a very quick point, we set out a 3-year plan for these renewal schools. We said we had to see results, we had to see improvement, or we would, at that point, be ready to close any schools after 3 years. But we also reserved the right to take actions quicker if we did not see the results we wanted. We have already publicly announced the closure of 4 schools that were not making sufficient progress and the merging of 25 others. That will ultimately be 12 remaining schools. Also want to note that under mayoral control, reform is possible in a way it wasn't before. The PROS program is something we're particularly proud of. literally saying that our teachers at the school level can vote to suspend their own union work rules. This has never been done in New York City since we've had unionized teachers. Under the PROS plan, agreed to by the union, teachers vote to suspend their own union work rules, to suspend DOE work rules, and do things differently to help the kids in the way they think is best. Let me use a great example I bet Senator Lanza will know well. The Petrides School on Staten Island, one of the prides of Staten Island. I had the pleasure of being out there last May. What's happening there? Because of some of the changes under the PROS initiative that's now in 126 different schools in the city, students can take classes that literally are modeled on college courses in every way. Seminar-style classes, lecture halls, but literally acclimating kids to the college experience in a way that wasn't possible before. Another example, Middle School 390 in the Bronx. The school schedule's been reworked. Students now have an independent reading period at the beginning of each day and a writing period at the end of each day. That's the teachers deciding that's what's best for the students and making the schedules work so that that's possible. Again, something that could only happen on this kind of time frame, especially under mayoral control. I mentioned your support for after school. I want you to know the investment you've made has made a huge difference. We've had almost a doubling of the number of middle school kids in after school because of your support. 110,000 middle school kids in New York City now getting free after school, 3 hours a day with tutoring and enrichment. They're safe after school. Their parents know where they are. They're getting the support they need. That's more than double the number when we came into office because mayoral control allowed us to move quickly and you provided the support. We also believe that one of the things that makes mayoral control an effective system is maximum parental engagement. I was a public school parent as recently as last June. I missed those days. The chancellor also looks at the world not only as an educator but as a parent and grandparent. We believe in maximum engagement with parents, so we have taken mayoral control and added a number of elements administratively. We added 40 minutes every week for teachers to engage parents, and we made it a systematic thing, that we wanted to see regular and constant strategic engagement with parents. The chancellor constantly meets with representatives of parents. We have a variety of methodologies that have been created at the school level to engage parents and get their feedback and change approaches and engage them as partners. But we're also particularly proud, we've added 2 parent-teacher conferences to the previous 2, so now there's 4 a year under our watch, much greater engagement. And here's what's interesting. As we made these changes, we did a lot more outreach to parents. We tried to figure out what would make them more able to engage and more effective engagement. And what we've seen, the rate of attendance of parents...
Excuse me, Mayor, can we close the phones? Just turn the cell phones off, please. That includes the audience, too. We don't want to interfere and
Thank you, Mr.
be
Chair.
disruptive.
The rate of parent engagement at parent-teacher conferences in the last year has increased 38%. This is really striking. As we've created more parent-teacher conferences, made them more appealing, we have had 38% increase in parent involvement in the parent-teacher conferences. We have literally had some schools where 100% of parents attended. And in terms of the community education councils, which are one of the great vehicles for bringing parent input into decisions about schools in a district, we have increased greatly the number of parents who are volunteering to become CEC members, an increase of 75% over the last 2 years, now to the point that we have ample number of parents ready to be a part of CECs, and it's partly because we engage them so consistently. So these are some of the things that have helped to make mayoral control more responsive. I also have to note that whenever we look at a situation in a school, any potential change in a school, we send out the highest level officials to work with parents, literally up to the deputy chancellor level. When we look at a co-location or any other potential change in a school, we send the deputy chancellor, we work closely with the CEC, the panel on education policy, et cetera, in making those decisions. Now, I want to say that we're quite clear about the fact that parents depend on us. Again, some of you know that I said in 2013 when I sought this office, to the best of anyone's historical memory, I was the first public school parent to become mayor while a public school parent. So I brought a different kind of perspective and experience. Parents entrust teachers and the entire school community with their children's future. And one of the things we've said is we're going to hold our teachers to a high standard. We have a great working relationship with our teachers. We believe they're doing extraordinarily important work. We're investing in them in professional development, but we hold a high standard. And we want our vast majority of teachers who are committed, passionate educators. We want to help them do better all the time. That's why the huge investment in professional development. But we also know that there are some teachers who should not be in the profession, and I've been very open about that fact. And I want to give you an updated number that from January 1st, 2014, when I became mayor, until the end of this last March, we helped guide 1,361 teachers out of the New York City public schools. People who were not suited to the profession, and we helped find the right pathway out. So we're supporting the overwhelming majority of teachers who are good and in many cases great, ready to be even greater. But we also know that some people don't fit the profession, and we found ways to address that. So I'll conclude with just a couple of points of where we're going from now. The vision that we're operating under for our schools is called equity and excellence. The notion of that vision is to lift up schools consistently across all communities, which was not done sufficiently in the past, and to hold a high standard of excellence. I mentioned the 70% graduation rate, first time we've passed that in New York City history. We have pledged to take that to over 80% in the next 10 years, and we're making major investments and policy changes to achieve that. We have pledged to increase the proportion of college-ready students to 2/3 of all of our students over the next 10 years. We will have all of our, and this is one of the most important pledges and most important commitments, and Mr. Chairman, I know you will particularly appreciate this as a former teacher. We believe if our kids are reading at grade level by 3rd grade, many other things are possible, and if they're not, they are often added a weight onto their future that is unfair to them. We have pledged in the next 10 years to bring all children to 3rd grade reading level by 3rd grade. This is one of the most important initiatives the Chancellor is working on, greatly aided by the investment that's been made in pre-K as a strong foundation. We've also been very clear that in the next 6 years, every 8th grader will have the opportunity to take algebra. In the next 5 years, every high school will have AP classes. Every high school child will have an opportunity to take AP classes. In the next 2 years, every middle school child will visit a college campus. Very important from our point of view to acclimate our young people to their possibilities of going to college. Every middle school child in New York City will be brought to a New York City college campus to be given that opportunity. And one other thing that's particularly powerful and never been tried before in New York City, a program we call Single Shepherd. This is focused on some of our most underserved communities, including District 7 in the South Bronx and District 23 in Central Brooklyn, including Brownsville, Ocean Hill, and parts of East New York. Every single 6th grade child through 12th grade child, all those grade levels, will be given a dedicated counselor, a single shepherd who is in effect a life coach, a counselor, a mentor, not just to work with them, but to work with their family members, to figure out what that child needs each step along the way to maximize their opportunity to get to college or choose another great outcome after high school. We've never had such a hands-on approach. This will be the first time we've made it this specific to help kids along the way, particularly in underserved districts. Finally, one of the other key elements of equity and excellence, computer science for all. We're integrating computer science education throughout the curriculum, and over the next 10 years, we will have the most extensive computer science education effort of any major public school system in the country. Many people in our city are excited about this. Our technology sector, which is a huge part of our city's economy, particularly appreciates the fact this is going to help create a whole generation of young people that can go into those great jobs, and we're excited about what it will allow us to do. Finally, as I conclude, as I said, the name of the program is Equity and Excellence. This is the governing philosophy of the Department of Education based on a speech I gave a year ago. One of the things we know we have to address is the fair student funding formula, and we appreciate again deeply the investments you made in education in the last budget. We are taking $160 million from the funds that you made available. We are raising the level of funding across all of our schools so that now the average of New York City public schools will be 91% of the fair student funding formula. No school will be at less than 87% as we go into this year. And all of our renewal and community schools will be at 100% of the standard. Next year, if you continue on a similar path of aid, again, which we appreciate, we will raise that commitment. We will get to an average of 92.5% for all schools across the system, a base of 90%, no school below 90%. Our intention is to continue on that pattern with your support, and by fiscal year 2021, all schools will be funded at a minimum of 100% of the fair student funding formula. So want to thank you for helping us to make that adjustment, which has been needed for a long time and will have a big impact on our kids. I conclude by saying I ask your consideration for an extension of mayoral control. I believe everyone knows my broader philosophy on this matter, which I'm happy to discuss, but practically I'd like to offer the notion of a 7-year extension, which is consistent with the original authorization of mayoral control in 2002. I emphasize again, I believe this issue goes far beyond any normal questions of party or ideology, because we've seen such tremendous support for mayoral control across the ideological spectrum. And again, when we see something that unites mayors of all different backgrounds, the business community, the labor community, it says something important is going on, something special, and mayoral control is allowing us to do so much for our children. So I ask your assistance, your support, your authorization of our ability to continue this work. I'm asking you to allow me to be held accountable by the people in New York City. It's as simple as that. The power of our democratic system means that I put forward a vision to the people. The people will judge me by the results. If the people don't like the results, they have a choice to hire someone else. I think that's a powerful, clear line of accountability. Mayoral control allows for that. And I ask your support for us to be able to continue our efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The line about your comment about people will decide if they like what you're doing, they'll rehire you. I think we all understand that philosophy up here on the dais. It's something we deal with every 2 years. Your comments, and I was pleased to be invited to your address on education at the school in the Bronx, and it looked very good. I heard what you said, a lot of good initiatives from my perspective. They were interesting. I thought some of them I frankly didn't think you were going to be able to do. But it's good to have high expectations and high aspirations. Quinnipiac recently did a poll that said 46% of the voters in the city of New York favored an extension of mayoral control, while 43% of the voters in New York City opposed it. You've made a lot of outreaches and you've made a lot of speeches, I'm sure, and commented all over the place. And Chancellor Farina is certainly an excellent advocate on your behalf and on the school's behalf and on the children's behalf. She does her job, and she does it very well, in my opinion. But what do you say to those parents, those voters, those people, the 43% who oppose an extension? What do you say to them?
Well, look, first of all, I'd say we're working every day to show people that our schools can do better, that we're hearing the concerns. A lot of the things that, when you were there at the speech, Mr. Chairman, emanated from concerns raised to us by parents all over the city. So showing that a system that maybe wasn't always as responsive as it should have been, particularly before mayoral control was in place, is continuing to make changes. And there's no doubt that parents are particularly appreciative of things like pre-K, after school, AP for all, computer science for all. We know from talking to so many parents how much those are the kinds of things they want their children to have. But I would say we have a powerful proof point. Mayor Bloomberg ran for office seeking mayoral control, was reelected twice supporting mayoral control. I ran supporting mayoral control. Polls are polls. We all of us in this line of work understand they come, they go, they're inaccurate, they're accurate, we're never sure, they're a point in time. Elections are a formal decision by the people. And now we've had 4 elections in a row in New York City that have ratified the notion of mayoral control because the candidates running believed in mayoral control. And again, I think these results, there's no question that people in New York City want to increase graduation rate. That's happened under mayoral control. So I would argue much more important than any polling would be the facts on the ground and the actions the people have taken in the electoral process.
This year, in our budget, we gave New York City, the state added about $9 billion to New York City schools. What's the city's contribution?
Let me get you the numbers, which I know someone was going to give me a sheet. Hold on one second, Senator, my apology. Because we have been increasing consistently our investment in education at the same time. You'll pause, we're having a technical malfunction. Thought it was already up here, but I have to get it.
All right.
But as I pause, I will say we've made clear That's the overall. Thank you. The able Sharif Solomon has come to my aid. 16.8 billion, Senator.
That is city money, not city combined with federal?
That is correct, total city funds. And I'm going to cue Sharif to give me the sheet with the increase, please. Thank you, Senator, for tolerating.
It's not a problem. I might, while you're doing that, introduce that we've been joined by Senator Laval, Senator Murphy, and Senator Little have joined us. If I've missed anybody, please.
We're also been joined by Senator Jose Peralta, Senator Leroy Comrie, Senator Velmanette Montgomery, and Senator Bill Perkins.
The high schools, I am told now, are allowed to set their own admissions criteria. This seems to have resulted in some schools having a lower enrollment of students that might fit poverty criteria, and other schools having a higher enrollment. How do you deal with that? How are you dealing with that? Because that would seem to be a problem that you would want to avoid.
May I defer to the Chancellor?
Sure.
Actually, it's not about setting their own criteria. They have to apply. The enrollment office is very heavily involved in what criteria high schools set up. This year alone has been the highest percentage of special needs kids being accepted to screen schools, students who we think will be successful in those schools, particularly if they're CTE programs. There's an advantage for students to be in CTE programs, so we've made that equal across the board. So no school can change their admissions procedures. Many of the high schools are zoned. They're locally, particularly in Queens. So anytime they want to make significant changes, it has to go through the Department of Education. And we're heavily monitoring for diversity. But diversity is not only one dimension. It includes English language learners. Keep in mind also that some of our high schools are particularly set up for new immigrants. Our international high schools are specifically set up for new immigrants. We have CT programs that if you're interested in plumbing, engineering, you have to have an interest in that. So this is not a way to have select students in certain schools. It's all monitored through the DOE.
Mr. Chair, can I just take you back one step and add a few additional figures?
Sure.
Put in context, since 2002, when mayoral control was established, the city's share of total education spending has increased by 12%. Since we came into office, we've increased city spending by $3 billion. The state has increased spending by $1.8 billion. At this point, our share of education spending in New York City is 57%, the state roughly 37%. Before the recession, the average traditional state level of support for the city education budget was 42%, so we're still not where we were pre-recession. But I want to assure you, we have continued to make major investments with city dollars.
I'm going to move on, and I thank you for the comments, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Senator Latimer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Chancellor Farini. It's good to see you again. I have a couple questions that have come out of other discussions, not necessarily personal questions, but that probe some of the structure that you deal with. You've addressed it, I think, to some degree in your comments, but would appreciate your further discussion on it. How do you assess the structure and the functioning as it exists now of the community education councils? Do you favor any changes in the authority or the scopes for the CECs?
Well, I think the CECs, as I said, they're becoming stronger. We have more and more parents, because of our outreach efforts and our engagement with the CECs, more and more parents who want to participate. I'll let the Chancellor speak to what she does directly with the CECs, which is outstanding, the direct engagement that she has. But look, what we said, for example, around issues I know parents care deeply about, and I certainly felt the same way as a public school parent on opening schools, closing schools, co-locations. We try to engage the CECs very consistently and the school community of whatever school is affected. I think we've been able to improve bluntly compared to a few years ago the level of engagement and the seriousness with which we take the concerns raised by the CEC and parents, and it often leads to a change in our plans. And you can see that visibly in the fact that our PEP, our central board, has altered plans based on parental concerns and even sometimes turned them down based on parental concerns.
Well, I think we've structured the CECs very differently. First and foremost, we changed the time that I meet with them. They used to meet for an hour once a month in the evening. We've made it 3 hours on Saturdays. We responded to a request that they had for them, their presidents, to be trained in leadership, and we hired an outside agency to come in and do leadership training for CEC presidents. We've made them a focal point of school walkthroughs for any co-location that is up on for a discussion. They walk the building with deputy chancellors. Depending on the issues that they have, we invite members of my staff from the high school CEC to the CEC that deals with special needs. Whatever guest speakers they want, we provide. But I think a prime example of the ones that really work very, very well, I was at a town hall meeting last night in District 13, which is a CEC, and we've invested that CEC with really heavily deciding how they want to move towards diversity. And they had requested, we had projected, for example, an elementary school, a new one in their district, and they requested that elementary school actually be a middle school instead, that they could have a hand in developing. And we actually are doing that in the Atlantic Yards. The CEC put together a committee of themselves and other parents to decide what that would look like. So I think this year, by the end of June, I will have done at least 100 town hall meetings, all done under the auspice of the CECs. And the major difference is when I go to these meetings, the questions come from the floor, they come from the CEC, and they're answered on the spot. Any question that doesn't get answered gets returned within 48 hours by a member of my staff. So we have done a tremendous amount of work with these CECs, and we ask them for their agenda. And I think that's really important. We've also asked them their help on recommending enrollment strategies and enrollment procedures, particularly when it comes to under-enrolled schools. So they are really a very important part of the work that we do.
And if I may, on this general topic, is there any need to coordinate the activities of the CECs and the schools themselves within each borough? Do you favor any change that would involve a borough focus for those CECs that fall within a borough?
Well, we have borough field services who now meet with local elected officials as well as members of the CEC, but in terms of a change for that specifically, not really, because I think in terms, you know, all education is local, and local, even within the same borough, is very different things. I mean, I know Senator Golden's district, I certainly know Senator Hamilton's district. They're not the same. Right. So having certain decisions and certain discussions really has to, and Staten Island is a world all by itself, in a good way. So I do think the decisions that we make are local, and I think actually to a large degree that is the way it continues. I know I went to speak to the editorial board at the Staten Island Advance, and one of the things I recommended, which they actually enjoyed the idea, is that every week they highlight a new school in Staten Island, one of our hidden gems. They just did it this week for Port Richmond. And that's as local as I really think things have to be. People believe in their local elected officials. They believe in that kind of decision-making, and I think that's really important.
Senator, if I could just quickly add, no, we believe the current structure is the right structure, but that it had to be approached differently. In other words, the bones of the situation were right. You know, the structural reality was sound, but it had to be approached in a way that was more connected to parents, more connected to the grassroots, more responsive. And that is not only a matter of the CECs, which are crucial, it's also a matter of what we're doing with our superintendents. Under this chancellor, the role of the superintendent has been reinvigorated. The superintendents really have a powerful ability to stay connected to communities and make sure that community concerns are addressed. That's something that had been atrophying for many years, but it's another way we stay connected, not just to parents, individual parents, but to community leaders, elected officials, to make sure that concerns are being responded to.
And also, let me add that one of the things that we discovered, and I'm sure it's citywide, but it was particularly true in the Bronx and in certain parts of Queens. Once we started meeting with parents, we realized that there were an awful lot of grandparents coming to these meetings. And as a result, we actually started investigating how many grandparents are actually raising their children. And in the city of New York, the percentage is quite high. So we actually started, as part of our parent engagement, a grandparent advisory group. And the grandparent advisory group is now actually coming forth with things that they want that are specially targeted just for them, some health issues for them, you know, how to talk to their children about their own mortality, but also, what are the latest books? They haven't had children in their homes maybe in 20 years, so how do we do that? So it's really learning on the ground what people want, rather than us mandating things for people to do. What do they tell us they want more of, and then us providing that.
I just have one final question, and then I'll turn my seat over to some of my colleagues who also want to be at the dais. Currently, the City Council has no direct or limited role in the structure and the implementation of the system. Do you have any ideas for changes or adjustments that you think would give the council a greater or more appropriate role in the governance and/or the administration of the schools?
I want to speak as Mr. Ranking Member. I want to speak as a former City Council member for 8 years, and I was a member of the Education Committee for 8 years. I think there's a substantial role right now, and one that we have encouraged and worked closely with. So again, I think the current structure of mayoral control is effective. But I can tell you, and I've heard this from many council members, they recognize that the chancellor and her team, and again, all the way down to the superintendent level at local districts, realize they have to be responsive to concerns raised by council members about what's happening on the ground. That was not always the case. So we consider the oversight role that the council now has, and both overall and locally, as important and something we want to engage. And as usual, everyone knows I was a legislator for many years, as I said. A legislator is going to see something happen on the ground, alert us. Are we listening? The answer is yes, we are. If they see a problem that needs to be addressed, we try to, in a very focused fashion, go at it.
Yeah, and again, I meet with especially the Education Committee and Chairman Drum on a monthly basis to discuss issues of them, and also bringing them up to date on any of the things when I visit schools that I think is something they should keep in mind, or issues that I am concerned about that I want them to think about. So it's a constant back and forth in terms of the conversations that we have. There's a lot of open dialogue.